Good afternoon to all. I'm Dr. Renuka Mohan Raj, Associate Professor of Computer Science and Organizer of Technical Talk. Welcome to the Technical Talk on Salesforce Development Overview and Career Opportunities. I would like to welcome and introduce our experienced resource person for this afternoon session, Mr. Josh Hendricks, Software Architect, Romney, West Virginia, United States. I welcome you, sir. Thank you so much. Josh has been a software architect for the Maharishi Jyotish and Yagya program website for the past 7 years, where he designed an extensive backend system that connects Jyotish and Yagya administrator with a worldwide client and donor base. He worked closely with certified Salesforce developers to provide a tailor-made solution that streamlines application processing, payments, scheduling, and internal communication and coordination. Prior to that, Josh was the lead developer for creditcardguide.com, which was sold to bankrate.com in 2008. He received a bachelor degree BA in cognitive science from Brown University. He also has a master's degree from MIU in the science of creative intelligence, and he is a Siddha and a long-term member of Maharishi Purusha program. It is delightful and proud to have Josh with us. My heartfelt thanks and appreciation to you for accepting this event. Now it's entirely your time for the presentation. Thank you so much.
Okay, well, thank you, Renuka, very much. I appreciate that. And it's a joy to be presenting to you all. As Renuka said, I'm an MIU alum, very proud, and have enjoyed actually half of the Master's in Computer Science also, but I did switch to SCI program. And for the past 7 years or so, it's been my joy to be managing the programmers for the Brahmananda Saraswati Yagya Foundation, and we have created a complete backend to handle all of the donations and Yagya requests that come in. It's a fairly extensive organization, and so I wanted to give an overview today of Salesforce. Salesforce, and let me actually share the screen here and get going with that. So an overview of Salesforce and also career opportunities in Maharishi's worldwide organization. Not many people know this, but of course you can't be a successful organization in the world without being a digital organization these days. And so there are a couple of interesting opportunities available there. And so we'll go over those more at the end. Just a quick disclaimer, many of the diagrams and text descriptions in this presentation are taken from public educational Salesforce presentations, so I didn't draw them all. And so all the graphics and the text are property of their respective owners. So about me, as I said, I think Renuka covered all this, but I'm an MIU alum, Siddha, and a longtime member of the Maharishi Purusha program. And so just in talking about Salesforce, many people may not have heard of Salesforce because it's a business-to-business organization instead of a business-to-consumer organization. So if you're using Google or using Microsoft or using Apple software, whatever you're using, that's all business-to-consumer. But businesses behind the scenes need to be able to service their customers. And so Salesforce specializes in software that helps with that. Salesforce was, it's the #1 CRM for many years in a row, and it's a very enlightened organization. Over the last 2 decades, Salesforce is, they've given over many millions of dollars to worthy causes, and also one interesting thing from a nonprofit standpoint, which is what we are, is that they give incredible discounts to nonprofits. It's just part of their philosophy of doing good for the world. They make some incredible software available at very reduced prices that nonprofits can take advantage of, and that gives them a lot of leverage to go out and perhaps spend the money on the things that they want to accomplish with their missions instead of on software. And so that really helps a lot, and we're very grateful for that. And Salesforce also announced that there's a net zero company, so they're very environmentally aware of what's going on, and they care about the environment, and it's a good organization to be associated with. Their flagship offices are in San Francisco. The Salesforce Tower is just completed in 2018. It's a 61-floor tower that looks out over the San Francisco Bay. Last week, a political activist scaled the tower to make a political point, and I thought that was kind of interesting. I guess you can do that. Maybe they didn't think of that when they were designing it, but he had some fun. But so as I was saying, what Salesforce does is business to business software. So they have the ability, they've developed internally sort of all of the boilerplate, all of the systems that apply to pretty much any organization. And they give you that as building blocks, and then you can build on top of it. And they have different, it's a cloud-based service. And so they have different clouds for different specialties. So for example, our organization uses Salesforce Sales Cloud. And Sales Cloud, is mainly concerned with customer relationship management and accounts and contacts and things like that. But they also have Service Cloud, which is customer service, Marketing Cloud, which allows you to design very extensive marketing journeys for your customers, including placing ads with Google and Microsoft and all that. They did recently purchase Slack. Actually, you may be familiar with Slack. It's quite a popular communication tool, and they're integrating that into their system. And they have a lot of other things as well. These are all more back-end items, but things that are interesting. But it's a very full-service organization. There's a lot of capability built in there. They are by far in certain segments, by far the leader over other companies like Oracle and Microsoft and SAP for sales applications and customer service applications and marketing applications. So they are very popular. And so you might say, well, who uses them? A lot of big companies, American Express, T-Mobile, Transamerica. And we'll talk a little bit more about why that might be in a moment. But they have over 150,000 business customers, including the nonprofits and the NGOs. And they just kind of a funny story. When we were first setting up, we had some special requirements in our organization, and we wanted to design our own specialized payment system. And so we wanted to integrate PayPal. So I didn't know much about Salesforce, and I called up PayPal, and I was, calling up their tech support, try to get some information, get set up, and asked the lady, well, we're trying to integrate with Salesforce. Have you ever heard of it? And she said, yes, I'm using it right now. And now PayPal obviously is a very acquisitive company, and they have a lot of different payment systems that you wouldn't use Salesforce for. Those would have to be, highly optimized systems. But for their customer service internally, PayPal uses Salesforce. And so that's, I thought that was an interesting anecdote. I've actually called them twice and found out the same thing twice about that. So it's the kind of thing that a big company who doesn't want to spend all of the money that you might need to for a very sophisticated back-end infrastructure, that's what Salesforce provides, and they provide it cheaper and better than if, in many ways, than if you were to develop it on your own. So that's their market. And they have different clouds for different jobs. As I mentioned, Sales Cloud gives you a complete view of a company's customers, their activity history, their contacts, all the communications you have with them, internal account discussions, things like that. Service Cloud is different. It's customer service, but it's an omni-channel system where you can provide personalized customer service across the web, phone, mobile, chat, all these things. and then keep a record of those so that your sales representatives can see what's gone on in the past with a particular customer when they call in today. And Marketing Cloud is also interesting. It allows essentially the automated construction of customer journeys. So customer journey would be, like, well, first, maybe somebody comes to your website and they download a white paper, and then but they leave their phone number at that point, and then you might send them an email, and later on you might send an advertisement to them through Google Ads, or you might send them a text message, things like that. Those kind of systems can be designed with clicks and with sophisticated branching logic and things like that, and very simply in Marketing Cloud. So these are all the kind of things that businesses need on a daily basis. And why build your own when you can use something that's pretty good already? And just as an example of a Marketing Cloud thing, as I was mentioning before, you might send a particular customer an email. And this is all designed just with clicks. Email 2 days later, send them an advertisement on wherever they happen to be. Wait for 2 more days, send them a text message, and then figure out where you are, and then have some branching logic. And so you can place ads with a particular customer on Google, LinkedIn, Twitter, Facebook, things like that. So that's handy from a marketing standpoint. Sales Cloud is a different thing. That's really more for businesses who do a lot of inside sales or any kind of sales, contact management, opportunity management, which is listing what kind of particular sales opportunity on a particular day you might have with this customer. Lead management, reports and dashboards, which are really nice. They have a mobile. You can actually have a mobile, design your own mobile app that you can use, and all these other things that essentially just simplify the process of getting the back end work done in a company. And just to give you an example of an opportunity, this is a record in Salesforce, and as you can see, it's the opportunity is, well, maybe there's the account name, the name of the company that we want to sell to is Acme Widgets, and this particular sale is we're selling some generators. The products over here are we've got a 1,000 kilowatt generator, 10 kilowatt generator, and a 200 kilowatt two 200 kilowatt generators. So this is the list that a salesperson might have in mind to sell to a company. And the salesperson would then go through these various stages and would keep track of the stages that this particular opportunity was in. And the reason that's helpful is because it can tell management up the chain where things are on a real-time basis, as far as what kind of revenue can we expect this quarter. So this opportunity might progress through certain stages: the qualification stage, the value proposition stage, identifying the key decision makers, making a proposal, doing a negotiation. Each different stage can be kept track of, and then can be viewed by managers in a dashboard. So what we just looked at was a single example of one particular deal for one particular sales rep. But now what we're looking at is what the managers might see. These are the aggregates of all the different sales opportunities. So maybe we've won 4 million in sales this quarter, and we have 231 open opportunities, and the average size of those sales is about $44,000. And so it's very, very helpful within organizations to be able to keep track in detail of what's going on and to be able to make real-time decisions on hard data. This square, for example, this graph, just to zoom in on a little bit, this is opportunities by sales rep. So each sales rep is listed down here at the bottom, and you can see these are the different ways that the leads came in, either from a website or from social media or from a marketing event or a referral, things like that. And here's essentially, it's a little blurry, I guess, but how much money each sales rep thinks that they can sell in each different one of these categories. So that's a handy thing for a manager to be able to see. And by the way, if anyone has questions, please feel free to just interrupt and let me know. But so, with that, with that graphic overview, it's also helpful to be able to drill down into the details. And these are the kind of details that, can be kept track of by the manager. So how does all that work? I mean, I know you guys are probably all interested more in the technical side and the coding side, but I wanted to just give an overview of what we're doing here. The Salesforce does have two different kinds of development. One is no code development or click to code development. So dragging, dropping, being able to configure different processes and different flows for rapid deployment. Developers are in high demand and are fewer and farther between than you might like. And so that's very handy for a large company to be able to hire a business analyst, someone who understands how the business works and maybe doesn't have a background in coding, but who can put together, with the appropriate enabling tools, can put together some processes and flows and sales funnels and things like that. Just dragging and dropping. That's a lot of what Salesforce does. But of course, the old 80-20 rule applies, and the hard stuff, it's the 20% that takes 80% of the time and manpower. So Salesforce also is a full web development, an integrated database platform. And so we're, our group in particular, I manage a group of 3 programmers, certified Salesforce developer, and we are deep into Visual Studio Code and all of the fun details. And I'll show some of that in a minute. But we actually use mostly programming because our particular use cases are kind of unique. But anyway, these are the kind of things that Salesforce provides, and different people come in with different skill sets and can make use of it in different ways. So, for example, a Salesforce architect is one type of certification that you can get, and the Salesforce architect might start with an opportunity and make a flow. So as soon as that opportunity was closed and it was won, and it was a high value opportunity, then the Salesforce architect can set up actions that can automatically be performed within Salesforce to, let's say, draft a contract, or after a little time, have some follow-up tasks, and schedule other contacts and phone calls and things like that. So these are the sorts of things that are in the click-to-code category. But also, our group is really more into the Salesforce development category. And so if you want to be a Salesforce developer, you need to dream in code and, do inefficiencies keep you up at night. That's the kind of thing that you guys are probably interested in. Salesforce is an excellent organization at communicating and creating an environment and an ecosystem around them that allows them to flourish and allows other people to flourish also. So there's an extensive certification program with excellent documentation and excellent testing, where you can get certified as, let's say, a platform developer 1, platform developer level 2, a platform app builder, JavaScript developer. All these things come in handy in different ways. And but my point in mentioning all these is, as a career path, Salesforce is a very good opportunity, because they just are excellent at what they do. If the reason that our organization decided to go with Salesforce originally was I just looked through the documentation and realized, wow, I do, I've spent plenty of time in the computer lab and I know what good programming looks like. And it just had that smell of wow, these people really are top notch in the way that they've designed their system. So, so that's that. And I guess next, what I wanted to talk about was the kind of the kind of niche that Salesforce, the kind of need that Salesforce fills. Now, some of you may be infrastructure people. You may be get deep into the details of operating systems and network firewalls and all the different kind of things, load balancing that you have to do in order to make a high availability system work. And that's fantastic. And obviously, everything, any good system is going to be built on top of all that stuff. That stuff is also very hard. Network security is very difficult, and it's a moving target. You've got continuously different hacks, different emergency situations that come up where your system is getting attacked, and you need a team 24 hours a day monitoring in order to be able to respond to those kind of things. For a company, particularly for a small nonprofit like ourselves, we just can't afford that. We cannot afford to hire our own security people. And so being able to take advantage of an infrastructure that's pre-built and done excellently and monitored around the clock 24/7, that is enormously convenient for us. So it certainly, in this slide, the emphasis on the left side here is, there are plenty of people who jump into this kind of thing. Our organization, we really need to have that provided for us. And so our focus is more over here on the right side of the slide, where the infrastructure is provided by Salesforce. Operations are mostly provided by Salesforce. And although we, for backups and things like that, we have to manually do things. But our focus is on just developing the apps. And Salesforce really makes that easy because they provide the building blocks for us to build on top of. And that the point of this slide is it changes the way you think about things. And for a smaller organization like ours, we really need to be able to just focus on the business logic and let everything else get taken care of by professionals. So, so let's see here. Why am I not advancing? So, for example, this is just emphasizing infrastructure again. There's things are sort of built one on top of the other. The network, the computing infrastructure, the physical and virtual hardware, virtualization, the application server, and the database. This is all stuff that I can't worry about, and I need professional service. But on building client-facing business logic, that's where I need to be. And so I'm happy to be up here and let Salesforce take care of the rest of it. So here's an example of what Salesforce provides out of the box. They provide all the kind of things that any organization pretty much needs. Everybody's, organization is just different groups of people. And so people have everybody's got a name, an address, and phone number and all that. And so why reinvent the wheel? Why not let Salesforce provide that for you? So this is the entity relationship diagram for what are called standard objects that Salesforce provides. So the account object, I want to go through this a little bit just because it's going to come in handy in some examples later on down the line. So the account object is sort of the parent object. You can see in this diagram, it extends across here, and it's got a lot of different relationships to different other objects hanging off of it. It even has, its own relationship, so you can have, sub accounts to your accounts. But let's just zoom in a little bit here. So with an account, you will have, for example, the account is the parent object, and the child object is the contact. So the account consists of, the name Acme Widgets and the company's headquarters address, and really it's the parent record that holds together all of the child records that have to do anything that has to do with Acme Widgets Corporation is going to be held together by this account. And you start, so if you need to find something, you start at the account record and then you work your way down. So for example, a contact object is a child of the account object. And so a contact would consist of the name, address, and phone number of a particular person. And there'll be, multiple different contacts for a given company. And so each one of those will have a contact record with their own name and phone number. And what this is showing, just, parenthetically, is a many-to-many relationship between contacts and accounts. And so there is this account contact relation where more specifics, there's certain kind of standard relations that Salesforce provides, and more this specific information about what's the relation to this contact. But a contact could also be, it's a many-to-many relationship, so it could also be related to a different account as well. Same person could be related to a different account. So are there any questions so far or anything? Okay, well, if anybody has any questions, let me know. Let's see here. So the point of this slide was that these are what are called standard objects that Salesforce just provides for you, okay? And you can make use of them, advertising campaign, you can make use of that, opportunities, you can make use of that. But you also are going to want to design your own custom objects. And so Salesforce lets you design custom objects that are first-class citizens and just like standard objects in most ways. But you will have special things for your organization that you need. Every organization is different. In our case, what we needed to do was set up a special payment system that could handle that. And so we wrote our own. So if, when people make a donation, a credit card's getting charged, we have a credit card processor that we use, and we, interact with that credit card processor behind the scenes and make the payment. This payment object is essentially just setting up the data structure for a payment record. And in that payment record, here's a field that handles the relation to the account that I was just mentioning in that previous slide. And it has a, in terms of details, it has what's called a master detail relationship, which means this payment is a child object of the account, and there are certain special things that go on with that. But also you can have a lot of different types of fields that as part of your data structure or your record structure, currency, date and time, text fields, and also a formula field. And a formula field is really kind of neat, and I want to show an example of it. But what it is essentially it's a field that the value of which gets calculated on the fly when you access it. And it can perform, there's a lot of different things that it can do. But it saves you a lot of time in terms of writing queries and getting information out of the database, because you can just essentially, it's just nice little, kind of almost like a subquery that just executes when you run a query. And but you don't have to make it part of your main query. So for example, if I wanted to select, if somewhere in my code I'm saying select the account administrator's email from a payment record, and I have some kind of where clause with that, that's all going to execute fine. But as I mentioned on this slide, the account administrator's email is a formula field. And so what happens is the definition of that formula is here in the bottom. And what it's going to do, it's going to hop over two other objects to get the information that it needs. So I'm going to go from the payment to the account. And then this is a special syntax that lets you jump from the account to the administrator field on an account record. And that administrator field contains a pointer to a user object, and the user object contains an email. So if I want to get the account administrator's email, I actually don't have to encode that in my query. I can just access the formula field, and the formula field just gets me the data I need. So that's just a minor example, just a real world thing that Salesforce has a lot of unique capabilities that I haven't seen elsewhere, but that are quite handy. Salesforce also has a robust permission system, and permissions are incredibly important because you really need to be able to control who can see what records in your system. And a lot of times you can think of it as sort of like, you know, the lower level salespeople are, you know, they have their areas that they need to focus on, and they're in their own silo. But then their manager needs to be able to have visibility down into all of the other, you know, the manager needs to be able to see every salesperson's records. And so the salespeople should not be able to see each other's records, but the manager above them needs to be able to see down into that. And that's just one example, but permissions within a database are, you know, what make that happen. And Salesforce has a very robust permission system. And so just as an example, object level security, Salesforce is an object-oriented database. And so object level security means, you know, security to control access to particular kinds of records, particular objects. They also have field level security, so you can control access on a field by field basis to different users that have different profiles and different permission sets. You also have record level security setting, and this is a different thing where basically on an ad hoc basis, well, on an ad hoc basis, you can create sharing of particular records in particular ways. So one of the ways that it's done is organization-wide sharing. So it's sort of a default sharing setting, but also they're sharing according to a role hierarchy. And that's what I was explaining before about the manager who, you know, needs to be able to see down into each of his employees' data. The employees cannot see each other's data, but the manager can see all their data. That's a role hierarchy permission set. And there's other kind of sharing as well, manual sharing and things like that. But Salesforce is the best permissions system I've ever seen, and permissions really are, in many ways, the heart and soul of a good system, because you really do need to have that, and be able to set it and not have to, and have it be reliable and not have to worry about it too much. So how, maybe getting a little bit more into the development details, I want to talk about Apex. And Apex is the language, it's the programming language that Salesforce uses. It's a derivative or very similar to Java. It has Java-like syntax, but in many ways acts like database stored procedures. So you're not going to be writing a bunch of SQL code to access the database. You're going to be writing all that in Apex, and that is very, very handy because you know, SQL as a language is great for some things and not so handy for other things. And a Java-like syntax is a lot easier to deal with. So for those of you familiar with databases, you know, of course, you write triggers that respond to certain actions when records are updated. Well, you're not going to be writing SQL triggers in Salesforce. You're going to be writing Apex triggers, and with a Java-like syntax. That's really, really nice. Apex uses a model view controller architecture. And so you can see from the end user's point of view, the end user is going to be looking at a view of the data, is going to click on something, and a request is going to go out to Salesforce's servers. It's going to hit a controller, which is just Apex code that handles that request. And then that code is going to access the model, the data storage, and it's going to bring back some records and do whatever you ask it to, and communicate back to the end user there. And similarly, when the developer is developing, you're actually writing in Visual Studio Code. So just let's see if I can get to Visual Studio. So Visual Studio Code, this is what we use, and I'm sure you probably are all familiar with this at some point. It's quite popular system, but this is where we write our code, but it's not compiled actually on the local machine. It's actually compiled. Back here on the Salesforce application server. And so that's similar to web development, where you write yourself an HTML page, you upload it to your server, and then you refresh your page, and you see whatever your changes were. Similar, I mean, not exactly, but very similar kind of a process there, where you write your code, you upload it, and it compiles there, and then is ready to run. So that's how that works on the developer side, and it's quite handy. But it is integrated. I'll show you later. It's integrated with Git. It's integrated with Visual Studio Code and all kinds of things. We use Bitbucket as our CI/CD system. So I guess this is just another example of Visual Studio Code in action. So actually, when you're coding in Salesforce, there are 3 different languages, or 3 different technologies that you use. Apex is Salesforce's proprietary programming language. Lightning Component Framework is a UI development framework that's similar to AngularJS or React. I'm sure many of you are familiar with those. It's its own system. It's quite good. It's specialized for Salesforce, but it's quite a good system, and very easy to get things up and running fairly quickly. There's an older language also called Visualforce, which is more of a markup language, and that you can use within Lightning if you need to. But that's similar to other markup languages that you may be familiar with. So those 3, and let's see here. And just a little bit more in depth on Apex. Apex is a strongly typed object-oriented programming language. And it uses, as I said before, syntax that looks like Java and acts like database stored procedures, and just allows you to very quickly add the business logic and all the customizations that you might need to do to the standard objects and things, functionality that Salesforce provides. So here's just an example, public class, hello world. Probably all of you can read that pretty easily and know what it means. It's just a for loop iterating over a set of books. But so that gives you an idea of the syntax. But let's, one other thing that Apex adds is something called structured object query language. And so we are, of course, in a web development environment where we're accessing a database all the time. And SOQL is similar to SQL, but it only handles the select part. For update and delete and all those other things, create, you're going to be using Apex for that. But SQL and a SQL-like syntax is really ideal for selecting certain record sets and being able to get at them. And so Salesforce provides something that looks pretty familiar to anyone who knows SQL, which is select ID from account where, name equals such and such. But the nice part about Apex, the part that I fell in love with, really, is that this, SOQL syntax they've got a lot of syntactic sugar where you don't have to call additional functions and pass in, different SOQL code. It just integrates right here. I don't know if it's obvious, but this is Apex here. I'm creating a list object of accounts, giving it a variable name, ACCS, and then I'm just providing the syntax that I need to select records out of my object that I'm on, and it just looks so clean right here. You don't have to do too much. It's very easy to be very productive very quickly in Salesforce, because they provide in Apex, excuse me, because they provide a lot of syntactic sugar that just helps you do things very quickly. And now, of course, this is just an example. You might note that it would be good to have some error checking here, but it's just an example. What this will do is return a result set, and then I can just iterate over that result set. And so if any, for any of the records that are in the result set, I'm just going to go through each one of them, and if change their name to Oracle. And then when I'm done with that, I'm just going to call update on this this variable here, which is a list. I'm just going to update this list, and those records that I just changed are going to be sent back and saved into the system. Like that. So it doesn't take a lot of work to do things pretty quickly. Here is the point. There is also another query language where, or a search language, really, I should say, that allows you, if you don't actually know, what fields the text that you're looking for might be in. This is, specific to searching, text fields, where it's a little bit less well defined what you're doing. There's a SOSL, Salesforce Object Search Language, which is sort of like Google search for your records. You can find certain things in name fields, and as you can, in this syntax, what it's doing is returning records from two different objects. There's a lead object and there's a contact object, and it's looking for Joe Smith in the name field of either of these two objects, and returning any records where it finds that. So that's another handy little thing. And so as far as retrieving data from the database goes, that's what we just covered. But now I want to move to triggers, which are triggered when data is saved back into the database. And triggers are written in Apex in Salesforce, and this is also very, very nice because it gives you all the expressiveness of your Java-like syntax, and at the same time does the job of SQL. So just this is an example. You can see I'm defining a trigger here, and I'm defining it on a particular object, and I'm going to be expecting that I'm going to receive, or this trigger is going to be activated when certain events occur on the records in the database. And so these trigger events are defined as being before an insert operation. I can intercept with this trigger, I can intercept an insert operation, do something before the records are inserted, and then let that insert operation proceed. So that's what this is saying here, in before insert. And the same thing as before update. I can intercept an update operation on records and do some processing before the update completes, and then let the update proceed. And similarly for delete, and also after insert, I can, after some records have been inserted, I can, again, this trigger can be called and do some post-processing, things like that. This is what triggers before, and Apex just makes it very easy to intercept things like that, intercept the data updates, the data manipulation, and do some processing. So here's an example trigger. maybe a little bit more in detail, where you can see this trigger is only going to be called after an insert operation and after a delete operation on the records. And if, so you can see we're checking here if it's an insert, so it's after insert. If we're in an insert operation, then we're going to do something here, like email somebody. And if it's a delete operation, we're going to do something different. So fairly straightforward, but very handy. But also notice, it is Apex, it's not SQL.
Sorry for the interruption. We have some questions in the chat session. Can we go with that?
Oh, yes, please.
Yes.
So let's see.
Yeah. I can share my screen.
Okay.
You can able to see the questions.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I haven't been monitoring this. Does it provide components as shipping?
Well, you can see. Okay.
Yes, I got it. So does it provide components as shipping, tax, and payments? Yes, it does. You can get those. We don't use those in particular, but they're definitely available. Salesforce is a software as a service platform. That's what it is. So that's answer to An's question. And let's see, Doi Trung says, it sounds like it doesn't provide programmers to build add-on apps to support multiple companies. Otherwise, a programmer needs to work with. Okay, now, in response to that, Salesforce, the question is, are there add-on apps for Salesforce? And the answer is yes, there are. There's something called the App Exchange. You can, if you are an enterprising developer and you want to develop an app for Salesforce, there are thousands of them already out there. People can do that. They can, it's sort of like the same as an app for a phone. You can publish your app and people can use it and subscribe to it. We pay a monthly fee for a particular app that we use called Appsona. And what that does is give us a very sophisticated merging capability for Microsoft Word documents. That doesn't come out of the box with Salesforce, but we use it. And so we pay for that each month. And it's a great service. We're happy to pay for it. So yes, so let's see. Zaman looks, I think it's not open source. That's correct. Salesforce is a paid service. They do have something called Hyperforce, where if you wanted to run it in your own environment, you can do that, but it's not definitely not open source. And let's see, Mikey says, if you already have an existing fully functional system, say an e-commerce website, how much work and rework or refactor is it to integrate with Salesforce? I think that's going to depend on what your system is. Certainly, if you have an e-commerce system, you're going to have probably some CRM built into that already. But Salesforce does provide REST services. You can very easily write REST requests with Salesforce, so you can communicate back and forth. That's how we communicate with our payment processor is through REST. So you could do that way. So yeah, okay. Well, that looks like any more questions, or should we go back? Okay, let's see. How do I get back to sharing my screen here? Yeah, okay. Okay, so just jumping back in, this is sort of a real world example of a trigger. You can see this is our a payment trigger. We are intercepting before records are inserted, before they're updated, after they're inserted, after they're updated, before they're deleted, and after they're deleted. We have all kinds of things that we need to do before that happens. And so our code runs through and it looks and it says, okay, if the trigger is being fired before the records are inserted, then we're going to do a few things. And before the records are inserted, and then we're going to check if it is an insert, then we're going to do a few things, something there. If it's also an update, we're going to do a few other things. So you can see it can be very extensive, what you can do and the kind of control that you have, but all in this nice Apex syntax. So now, Salesforce is also a multi-tenant environment. And what that means is that you have got, you're not the owner of your server per se. You are in a virtualized environment. And so you've got your own Salesforce instance and other people have their Salesforce instances and they're all running on the same server. And so you've got to share and you cannot monopolize all the resources of the server. So there are things called execution governors and limits. And there are just restrictions on, the amount of resources that you can use at any given time. For example, you can't do more than 100 data manipulation language or SOQL statements in a single transaction. You'll get blocked at the 101st. And if that happens, there's going to be a runtime exception that cannot be handled, and your entire transaction is going to be rolled back if you exceed that limit. So that's just an example there. Let's see, just a question. Looks like Doi Trung says, I'm not sure how long from migration support from legacy systems to Salesforce. Yeah, that's going to depend on the system itself. And on the programmers you have and things like that. But so yeah, it's hard to answer that one. But yeah, it could definitely. Salesforce is its own system, certainly in terms of data and the data model. You could import your data fairly easily. In terms of the code itself, it would have to be rewritten from scratch, pretty much, because it's an Apex. So let's see here. So back to execution governors and limits. Gee, this is a little hard to see, but total number of SOQL queries issued in a given transaction, well, the limit is 100. And if you exceed that, as I said, you're gonna run into trouble. Total number of records received is actually limited to 50,000. And that's usually plenty. And you can also, perform subsequent queries with basically a start at. And so you could get to the 50,000 first record just in a separate query. So other different limits, there are lots of different things that have to be taken into account when you're in a multi-tenant environment. Now, one of the things that is a consequence of the limits is that you have to do something called bulkification of your code. And bulkification is a word that's, I think, is particular to Salesforce. I haven't seen it anywhere else. But the idea is that instead of writing code that anticipates that you're going to be updating or inserting one record at a time, you pretty much have to write your code as if you were always handling multiple records at the same time. Even if there's only one record being updated, you want to write your code as if you're handling multiple records. And so that's called bulkification. So this is just an example. This top code here is the way you would not write code in Salesforce, because what you've got here is an SOQL statement. So this is a query, and it's happening inside a for loop. And so for all the account records that are being created or updated here, for each one, we're going to run a query. Now that is very inefficient, and you don't want to be doing that. And eventually somebody will send you 101 records to update, and you only have 100. You're only allotted 100 queries in your transaction, and so you'll run into the limit there. So what you do is you do something like down here, which is basically you embed this query into a query up at the top and get all of these records, all the records that you need you collect them in a list in advance, and then you iterate over them and make all the changes that you need. So that's so your for loop winds up being a lot simpler and also a lot more efficient down there. But that's a consequence of the governor limits that Salesforce enforces. You do have to change how you write your code, but in a lot of ways that's a good thing because you wind up being more efficient yourself. Let's see. Okay, it looks like there's another question. Which type of company or size of industry doesn't use code? Basically, there are a lot of different companies who use Salesforce, and so everything from healthcare to American Express uses it. Payment systems, and it's a Fortune 500 company that services other Fortune 500 companies. And so any Fortune 500 company that needs a back end could use Salesforce, and companies large and small use it. So, okay, so that's an example of that. And one other thing I wanted to just mention is that test classes. Of course, if you're writing good code and you're following good coding practices, you're writing test classes, and you're writing unit tests that test your code very thoroughly. And when you change your code, you're changing unit tests as well. And with Salesforce, unit tests must cover at least 75% of your Apex code. And that gives you a little leeway where you don't have to, cover every single line, but it does keep you on your toes as far as, the kind of code you can write. And these unit tests actually get run every time you deploy. The way that coding works is you do your development in a sandbox, and that sandbox is an exact replica of your production environment in many ways. And so you do your development there, and then you deploy your code to production through a deployment process. And when that deployment process executes, your unit tests are going to execute before your code reaches your production server. And if they fail, that deployment's going to get rolled back, and you're going to have to do a little bit more work. But that is actually a very good system, because it allows for continuous integration and continuous testing, and it allows you to update things in a very agile manner. Salesforce is definitely in the agile categories as far as development best practices go, and that unit tests keep you honest. So that's a good thing. So I just wanted to move maybe to a more real world example. As mentioned before, I work for one of Maharshi's organizations. Maharshi International University is founded by Maharshi Mahesh Yogi, and he has many organizations around the world that help with the mission there of teaching transcendental meditation and other things. And so this is one of our real world applications on the Jyotish and Yagya website, where you might fill in your contact details for an application to apply for a service. And let's say it's Acme Widgets is the name of the company that's somebody's applying for. And then you might, the payment system that we wrote is, particular to our situation. And so as somebody goes through, they're going to fill out their payment information, just standard like you might expect. And then they're going to pay by credit card here. And when that data goes into the database, the reason I'm showing this is because we designed this payment system as a custom system, and so what we do is we define the field names and the field types, and whatever, if it's a text field, how long does it need to be, checkbox or a pick list, multi-value list, things like that. We define all those things, but then Salesforce gives us this nice display of the data that is in the system. So I don't have to write a component that will display all this information for each record. Salesforce just automatically does that for me. And that's very, very helpful, because I don't, from the business point of view, I don't need to be writing all this stuff. I'd like to just, be able to design the object that I need and have some help displaying the data. And so this section is something that Salesforce gives us pretty much automatically. But when we, actually forgot to mention, we're into the Lightning Web Components section. So this is Lightning Web Components are the graphical user interface components that run inside a browser, just like React and Agile. So what we needed to do with our system was develop a way to process a payment once it came in. And with a credit card, you go through a step where you actually capture the payment. Or if somebody wants a refund, then you need to void the payment if it's within 24 hours, or after 24 hours, you need to refund the payment. So we needed to write this little component right here, and just to process. And so I want to just go through quickly how we did it. And let's see. So I'll just skip down to here. So what I'm showing now is the code behind the scenes that displays that component. And I'm sure y'all are familiar with HTML and things like that. This is there's a lot of custom tags that Salesforce provides, but this is behind the scenes. We're looking at what's called a lightning card, which just means it's like an area on the screen. And we're now defining, let's see. You can see we've got 4 buttons here: payment terminal, the capture button, the void button, and the refund button. And those are being defined here: payment terminal, capture, void, and refund. And we're connecting those up through an on-click statement to a particular function that's been defined. So when somebody clicks on the payment terminal button, the payment terminal function gets called, and somebody clicks on the capture button and the capture function gets called. So the HTML part of a web component looks like this. And then you can see here, we're in the payment control.js file now. And so the .js file looks like something you might expect in a fairly intricate JavaScript environment. We're importing a bunch of different components here, and defining some constants, and then we've got basically the controller that extends a Salesforce native object. And let me switch over here to, this is the actual Visual Studio code where that screenshot came from. And so the functions that I mentioned on that other page are defined way down here in our code. So for example, here's the payment terminal function that I mentioned on that other, in the HTML file, and here's where it's defined. And we're going to do some error checking there. Here's the capture event that's attached to that particular button, and void event and refund event. So it's it's fairly straightforward. Obviously, you have to become familiar with the way Salesforce does things, but it should be familiar, I would think, to anyone who's familiar with React or anything like that. So let me see. So I'll go back here and scroll to the next. Yeah, I probably should have covered this a little bit earlier, but here's what a test class looks like. And as I mentioned before, test classes are a critical part of your development process. You do have to, make sure that your code works, and it's a lot easier if you actually test it. But this is, there's a special syntax where you could define a test class, and then the logic of your test class would set up some records and insert them, and then retrieve them, and make sure that, like, if you had some function here, just do an assert where you assert that you actually are getting what you think you're getting. So let me look at some more questions here. Let's see. Okay, so Deutschung says, do they provide the way for clients to run the tests locally? You can run Jest tests locally, meaning your Lightning Web Component tests are all run locally on your machine. The Apex testing does need to be run on the server, and that's because it's connected very closely to the data. So you actually can do mock-ups of data, but that's actually, it's all going to run on the server. Let's see. Will Salesforce grow in the future? Yes, Salesforce is growing by leaps and bounds. There are more than 1 million Salesforce developers out there. They have an excellent developer education system. There's something called Trailhead, where basically you can start from knowing nothing and get up to speed and become certified through the kind of documentation that they provide. And the documentation is excellent. We've never run across a situation where we felt, oh, this documentation, I don't know who wrote this, but it doesn't help us. Salesforce really, I don't know how they do their hiring, but they just are excellent at just about every step of what they do. And their documentation is one of the most impressive things about their system, because you really learn a lot and get a lot of work done very quickly by accessing it. And as far as growth, yes, I mean, I don't know who wouldn't use Salesforce. So yes, absolutely. Let's see, the code looks like stencil code. I don't know stencil, unfortunately, but in terms of performance, there are some performance graphs built into the system. That's actually, I actually right now I manage. I'm 54, and they've kind of kicked me upstairs. So as far as performance goes, I can't give a good example, but there are performance metrics available. Sooner or later, we have to decentralize everything. Salesforce must have a blockchain in their think tank. They do. They actually have a blockchain. Blockchain is very interesting. I'm into blockchains myself, and but yes, they have a blockchain offering for those who need it. I don't think you could run a cryptocurrency on it, but there are a lot of applications of blockchains in enterprise resource management, supply chain management, things like that, where you really, the features of a blockchain can be utilized in a business context, and they do have that. So, yeah, well, I think I'm pretty much at the end of the presentation. I am here representing the Maharishi Jyotish and Yagya programs. We are hiring. We're looking actually particularly for some Salesforce person right now, or a business analyst. And we have excellent pay and benefits. We are a part of Maharishi's worldwide organization, and serve a particular clientele who are interested in something called Yagyas, which I could explain. So that's as far as Salesforce development goes. We are hiring. Also, I just wanted to throw this in because I thought it might be of interest. This is a completely separate organization and does not use Salesforce, but the TM Transcendental Meditation community app is also live on Google Play and on Apple Store, and it provides videos. It provides updates about global events. You can track your meditations. Have a custom timer. They have some job openings as well, which are the company is Maharishi Foundation International. So I'm just throwing them in because they are looking for good folks. They have job openings here, and so I just wanted to say thank you very much. This is my contact information. I appreciate your coming, and I'd be happy to answer any more questions that you have. But if you're interested in contacting me, this is my email, jphendricks@ramraj.org. If you're interested, I can also put you in touch with people about the TM app, or this is the website for that. So, thank you, Zaman. As Zaman said, excellent presentation. Hope you'll join. Hope you'll join for the MIU. Oh, great! Yeah, go for the masters. Yeah, that sounds great. It's a wonderful program. Fantastic. So, any other questions, or maybe I'll stop sharing and.
Guys, if you have questions, you can ask now.
So sounds like we've answered everybody's questions.
Yes, from the chat session, we covered everything. Thank you so much for this nice presentation and good interaction with everyone.
Okay, well, thank you very much for having me. I really appreciate it. I'm a warm supporter of MIU and of the program there, so very happy to be able to join you.
Thank you so much. Yeah, right. See you in future talks. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Renuka.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye
you so
for
much.
all. Have a great weekend. Bye for all.
Have a great weekend.